Hello, 你好. Welcome to Mandarin Mama Chitchat. It is where Trista and Yao Yao, two Taiwanese moms, share intriguing conversations with amazing people from all over the world. We're super excited and grateful to have you here, and really hope you enjoy our chit-chat.
Hi, welcome back to Mandarin Mama Chitchat. Your time is so valuable. I'm so glad you are here spending your valuable time with us. Thank you so much for being here. I want to make sure you subscribe to our podcast because we will have a new episode every week with amazing guests, and I don't want you to miss it. So make sure you subscribe, you'll get notification. I also want you to go to our show notes after this episode and sign up for our newsletter.
My friend Tracey joining us today, and I'm super excited because we haven't spoken in a long time. And last time when we talked, like we were chatting before I hit recording, it was before I became a mom, so I feel like it was a lifetime ago. So I'm really excited, and then to hear like what all has happened in all these years and what the things she's into recently lately. But all right, welcome, Tracey.
So I can just introduce me a little bit.
Sure, yeah. Why don't you share with us like who you are, where you are, what you do, and just anything you want to share with us.
Well, I am born and raised in West Lafayette, Indiana, and I'm currently also living in West Lafayette right now. But to go on this journey a little bit, so I went to Indiana University, and I studied a BFA in painting. And then I also have a East Asian studies minor and like Chinese minor. And then I had a year in between where I came back to West Lafayette and I was working in a gallery downtown Lafayette. And then I was teaching private art lessons. And then I don't know, I was just doing miscellaneous things at that time. I also helped somewhere in between. I can't remember the time exactly, but I was also helping an Asian market with like rebranding their market. And then after I was here for, like a year, and then I was like, I need to do something with my life. And then I didn't want to go to grad school, but then I was like, okay, I need to go to grad school. And started applying to different schools. And I ended up in Baltimore for my grad program. So I stayed there for 3 years. So also studying fine art as well as curatorial practice. And so in between this is where I met Trista, because I actually first met Trista at Indiana University at IU. Mm-hmm. And it was when I remember I had a friend, and I can't even remember which friend it was right now.
Colin.
Oh, yes. Okay, you remember better than me because I'm like, I remember I had a friend who invited me to the Chinese.
I'm going to tell him that you forgot about him. I thought you guys were pretty close. No.
The Chinese language tables, but I remember thinking that like I don't actually need to go to a Chinese language table, although I was taking Chinese lessons at IU. I didn't need to go to one of those well, it's like a refresher session, right? Like a review session.
Review and just like enrichment for Chinese language.
Right, yeah. Because friends are like, like you're just hanging out with friends all the time, right? So a friend is like, come with us. And then I'm like, okay. So like, I think there was a group of us that went. So that's where I first met you because you taught that that class pretty much, like that session.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You were there and doing your grad school, right?
Yeah.
And you're studying like how to teach Chinese, pretty much.
Language pedagogy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think it was memorable for you because at that time I went in with the other friend, and at that time we both had like bald heads because we both shaved our heads, as well as Colin. Now I remember Colin shaved his head with that. So it was me and another girl and Colin. We all shaved our head at the same time. Yeah. But it was actually for me, I had a really best friend from high school, and she had illness, so she had leukemia, and then I shaved my head to support her, and then I just had two other friends who shaved their heads to support me by doing this action. So it's just a lot of things.
And they don't know that friend of yours. Your friends are just morally like supporting you.
Yes, and then the girl that shaved her head with me, it was only like the second day of meeting her or knowing her, which is kind of
Wow.
crazy that she
It
did that.
is.
But she said that like she's kind of always wanted to do it, and she's like, why not? She never had the opportunity to.
Finally found the reason.
It looked really good with her shaved head. Anyways, but kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that was like memorable somehow about that moment. And I don't know
Whenever
I can't remember, but when I was in Baltimore, I reached out to you.
Yes.
But I can't even remember like what was in my head.
No, I mean, like when you first came to a city alone, right? Like it's far away from Indiana, and you didn't know anybody at the time, right? I'd assumed.
I think I didn't know anybody except for like my classmates there,
Right.
and there's obviously very little Asians in Baltimore,
Yeah.
and then but I think I got connected because I knew from Facebook. I can't remember if I had Facebook connection with you at the time or not, but I had Facebook connection with my Chinese teacher, and I saw her in can't remember if she was in Johns Hopkins or if she was in DC, but anyways, it was like somewhere close by, so I reached out to her, and I think she recommended
reaching out to me. You
were nearby, and then the other friend was nearby, and then I reached out to both of you guys.
Yeah.
And everyone knew each other, right? So
yes, yeah.
Somehow that worked out, and it just happened that my thesis project that I was working on had to do with the spectrum of Chinese identities, and I was trying to gather different artists with different Chinese identities, pretty much, and then to really show like just how wide the diaspora is. You know, you could be from mainland, you could be from Taiwan, that's a huge diaspora. And so that's kind of the research that I was doing. But I also connected with you because you were teaching
high school Chinese.
High school Chinese. And then the other friend was teaching Chinese at Johns Hopkins. And then so her students, she actually got her students to write in Chinese. So they had like essays in Chinese and in like translation in English. And then it was the students' essays were exhibited in my art show.
I remember that. Yes.
I don't know. That was just really sweet that
yeah.
we could like collaborate in that way. That like, I mean, I never really thought that something like that could happen, but it's just like somehow, I don't know, we made it happen that like connected a Chinese class with an art show and put it together. But I think something that like why it's really meaningful to me is because I also took a lot of Chinese classes when I was younger. So Chinese school every Sunday for like 2 hours. So probably since I was like 4 years old until I was senior in high school, graduated from high school. So I don't know. I think maybe because of the amount of time I spent in Chinese school just made me grow an appreciation for Chinese culture and just learning more about my identity and everything. Yeah. So I remember the summer after high school, I went to Taiwan and I took summer Chinese lessons at Zhongshan Daxue in Kaohsiung. And I think that was the first time in my life that I met other like Asian Americans or like Asian Canadians and like people who like look like me.
So growing up, you did not have that exposure? Just out of curiosity.
We had a very small community of like, so all the Taiwanese parents knew each other, right? So we would celebrate all of our holidays together. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, it would be like your house, my house, you know. We would spend it with like our community or like these Taiwanese families, right? Like these aunties and uncles, I mean, like they're closer to us than our real relatives that are in Taiwan, right? They're just like
Yes.
a little bit more distant. Like we do see them, but like less often versus like the aunties and uncles who like they watched us grow up here, right? And
Yeah.
it's a slightly different connection. But I mean, I would say that like my school, so like elementary school to high school, it's I mean, it's a very predominantly white town, but at the time that I was growing up, there were, because it's a college town, so I live near Purdue University, we have quite a lot of like, like international students and immigrants coming in. So a lot of my classmates' parents were like, some of them were European immigrants, Swedish or like
Right. But they're
Russian.
immigrants. They're not like you, born and raised in America.
Right. And then there are obviously like Asian immigrant parents as well from Korea, China, different places. But and India, of course, India is a big one. But it was a very, I would say, predominantly white. It felt predominantly white because of like the authority figures, right? So teachers, your administration, everybody is white. If you go out to like a Walmart, everyone serving you is white, right? Like our town, I feel like has changed dramatically. Like after I came back from grad school, I'm like, sometimes I barely recognize this place. Just but like the dynamic of the people is completely different. Like it's a lot more diverse now. You see like people of all different like races, cultures here right now. But when I was growing up, it was
White.
just very, very white. Wherever you go, it's very white. I would imagine it's probably similar to like Ohio, right? Like
Yes,
Midwest.
yeah. Depends on where you live too, but yes.
Yeah, somewhat of a similar culture. But so that's why it was like a huge cultural shock for me when I went to Baltimore, right? And then it's a predominantly Black city, like 60% Black.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just, I was like, oh, this is so different.
Yes.
And then I started to learn about the histories between like the whole American history, like the whole American history kind of like hit me a little bit like stronger of like, oh, what does this actually mean for them, their histories versus like in West Lafayette, it was mostly just like, the understanding of these immigrant families coming here and there's minorities here and we're coming into, this white environment, society, and we have to try to fit in and assimilate to them. And so growing up, I think I saw it more in my, I guess, friends. Just, sometimes you might feel a little embarrassed about like your parents speaking English in an accent, or you want to like kind of push away, kind of erase your own culture, like push away your own culture in order to like fully assimilate. But I also see friends like regretting it later on, because like you realize that like you maybe need to use Chinese at work, and then you're like, oh, I wish I could have learned a little bit more when I was younger instead of like pushing it away. I think I'm the opposite though, right? So like I see a lot of peers doing that, kind of like I don't know, somewhat like
Resisting
or like pushing away the like Asian culture, like Chinese culture, and maybe just being more Americanized in general. I think I'm the opposite. I think I feel in my heart a little bit more Chinese than
love it.
I'm
So like I want to keep talking, but there's so many things I want to unpack. Like even though we've been friends, but we haven't really talked about this at all. So like I just love it. But sorry to interrupt. But yeah, so please go ahead, continue.
Yeah. No, yeah, but yeah, any questions that you want?
Yeah. So I guess could you share more about, I guess, your own identity journey, or like maybe there's no journey, you just have a very clear identity growing up? Like how, like I guess, do you have siblings? And then growing up, how was the home environment versus like, in a predominantly white community, right? But the fact that you feel, I guess, more Chinese or like more proud of
about my family. That might be a good starting point. So I think I have an older sister, so pretty much I would like growing up, I would do whatever she did. And I didn't really have much of a like I wasn't as open as I am now, like talking to you like really freely, right? I was very quiet as a child, so I think being bilingual definitely made me like a little bit slower in the speech development. I think like I could comprehend teachers perfectly fine. Like I didn't learn English until I went to preschool, right? So my parents have never taught me English. So everything that I learned English wise is from school, starting from preschool and just going into school and just being in that immersed in that environment the whole time. And I mean, I can't remember. Like, I have this actually have like a really early memory of like before going to preschool, and me and my sister would just like be at home. She'd pretend to be a teacher and speak gibberish, but pretending that she's speaking English. Like, I have this memory. But now obviously it's like really far, and clearly our English is better than our Chinese now.
So how much older is she?
She's
Than
4
you?
years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I remember I was just a very, very shy kid. I did not talk. I could go the entire day of going to school without saying a word. Like sometimes if you can, like if someone says something to me, ask me a question, I might just respond like one word, maybe
Mhm.
2 words. That's it. Like I just didn't talk to people that much when I was little, but I watched a lot of TV. So um, I feel like I think TV intake would probably be also like 50-50. So 50% English television, 50% Chinese television. But I watch a lot of TV. And I think that so the Chinese television would come from my dad. So like he actually has a big interest in Asian history, like learning about Chinese history, Taiwanese, Japanese, everything. Like he just is like loves history and culture, and so he would watch a lot of historical dramas. And I remember when me and my sister were in elementary school. I mean, like pretty much like every day we come back, and my dad, when he's back from work, he's just like sitting down and watching TV. So we would watch TV with him. I mean, it was kind of not really a choice. Like we'd be eating and he'd be watching TV, so we just watch it, and then we would be curious about like the fashion, right? The ancient like Chinese, like the headdresses, the gowns, and they're just very, very elaborate, and we'd be really curious about it. And so we would ask, but like there's some terminology in historical dramas that in our daily Chinese language we won't know, right? Like like emperor, empress, and there's just a ton of terminology.
Yes.
And so I remember like we would just sit there and we would ask our parents like, oh, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? And then my mom is always very patient, so she would, whatever we don't know, she would tell us like this is what that means, or she would like they would pause the TV and explain to us like what's happening in the 剧情, what's happening in the play. And so I think so I think that's how it kind of got us hooked. It got us hooked on dramas anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, historical dramas, modern dramas, we kind of just watch everything.
That's
and
fascinating because the language it uses is very sophisticated.
Yeah. And then the first drama though I remember is the Princess Pearl. So 还珠格格. I think that one was like one of the first dramas that we watched.
Love it.
And then let me think what else. Like I think though, like my parents were actually, I feel like they were quite homesick actually. At the time that I was growing up, like they're often like if we're driving around in the car, they'd be playing like Chinese music, right? So I actually feel more connected with Chinese music more than I do with American music, although I listen to both. But it's because I think just like being in the car, and that's just what you're
Early
absorbing.
exposure too.
Yeah, early exposure. So to me, it just Chinese music feels just comfortable to me.
Right.
And then let me think. And then obviously like cooking, right? Like my mom just cooks a lot. Like cuisine is very much like Chinese. But I think when we were younger, it was more traditional. Like she would do rice every day with like 4 different vegetables or meat dishes.
Wow.
Like it was just like very like this is what you're having, and you better eat everything that's on your plate, you know. But I
Yeah.
think as we got older, I think my mom is also more like open-minded, so she is also very like into different cultures, right? So kind of like the influence of different cultures also get kind of influence into her food as well. So it's kind of become a little bit more like fusion and made more laid back nowadays rather than when we were younger.
Mhm.
But
I need to take notes from your mom because I feel like, because like Taiwanese food is so hard to make. So like what I cook is like American, Western, whatever you call it, just anything I can pop into the oven, right? And then,
yeah, I think she's an expert though. Like when we had like the family gatherings, like everyone would always compliment my mom's cooking is like the best.
wow.
But because her cooking is the best, mine is like really bad.
She does all the cooking,
I
right?
can do anything. But I also want to learn, but I want to learn like really easy things to make.
To boost up your confidence first, right? Because
Things that are easy and simple.
yeah.
Like I'm good. I think I could do probably like a hot pot party or dumpling
Oh,
party now.
I've done that before.
Like,
Yes, yeah.
confident, but like all those other dishes, like the more ingredients there are, the more it scares me.
No, agree. And the cleaning too afterwards. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my
the
gosh.
cleaning has always been, I know, a
So like
complaint.
recently, I'm also like
Not
anything
moms.
just anything that's easy and quick. That's me as well. I guess a fast food culture. But I recently made yansuji, the Taiwanese peppermint chicken. Obviously not the healthiest, but I was it was a big success actually, and it was pretty
That is
easy. Maybe I can send
wonderful.
you the recipe a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, it was easy, quick.
So like even cuisine, right? Like I think my mom, she studied like homemaking, so like how to be a good housewife, and like what they have to learn in their class is like how to cook, like how to host an event and how to cook like this like meal for like a certain amount of people, like 10 plus people or whatever, right? Like they have this like training, so it just makes kind of everything in the house just
For
seems
expertise.
easy. Like it looks so easy on the outside. It's not easy when you do it, when I do it.
Yeah.
Um,
So what is this? That's a degree or what is it? I never heard of this program.
mhm. It's yeah, it's I mean, I think in America we have it too. We learn some things in school
Home
called
economics.
yeah, like home economics. As like our high school called it facts. But it's like you learn sewing, cooking,
Uh,
but it goes deeper than that because they have to learn a little bit of like
college or like a trade
accounting
school.
stuff. It's kind of in between college and like high school type.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I didn't
then,
know about this program. Maybe I should take it.
but I mean, you never know what's handy, right? Like she always
Right.
says that, like she doesn't have the highest degree, like my dad, who has his like PhD, right? He came to America to study master's and PhD. But like there's a lot of things that I think moms, you know, they're good at, and it's life skills, right? Life skills, family skills, communication. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like just so much is involved. And also I think the idea of like adapting, like there's Chinese cuisine, but like if we live in America for a long time, it's like what are certain ingredients that you adapt in order to change to other things, right? So for example, we have, you know, like Ime has those like green onion pancakes, right?
Yeah.
And they're like really easy to cook, fry. And then but my mom will make that into like danbing. Just add an egg and it becomes a danbing, right?
Yeah.
Or you can put chives inside of it and it becomes a 韭菜盒子,
Oh, really?
right? And yeah, you just put the chives inside and then you do the bien,
Yeah.
you know, you do the edges,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it just becomes a 韭菜盒子.
Oh, I've done the dumping, put the eggs in there. I have not done 韭菜盒子.
So there's things that like you utilize and
Creative.
change it into something else.
Yeah.
And it's like the easier way to do it, you know?
Right. Sounds like my way. Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So
Yeah,
you
I
think,
always think that I was a little bit of like my sister's shadow in a sense, because she was just does everything, and then like I said, I didn't even talk when I was little, so my sister just spoke for me, and I was like, okay, I don't need to talk. Like we
so
think our
she's,
parents are God, and
yeah,
they
that's
know what I'm thinking.
I know it's kind of my kids too. Like Leo, my oldest talks a lot, and then my younger ones, it's just they're 4 and 2, and my 2-year doesn't talk as much. I don't know, his personality wise, or like just because Leo talks so much, and she just doesn't feel like there's a need for her to speak.
Yeah, but I think you also need to, somehow like train and prep along. Like I don't even know how my mom did it, but somehow she got me to like talk more. And I think it's
Nice.
just about one-on-one time, I think is important. And like finding ways to bond with your child, and but to
Mhm.
talk about it, right? Like if you make like I'm an artist, right? So if you make an artwork, talk to your kids about like, what are you drawing right now? And just like, like have them tell you stories, but like
Mhm.
try to prompt them to talk, I
Mhm.
think is really important.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
like
know.
that. Definitely, like if they're interested and they are curious, if they're interested in something, they would be willing to speak more for sure. If something
Mhm.
they don't really care about, then you can't really force them to
Yes.
produce much
But
for
I
sure.
also feel like that's what it is with languages, right? Because
Mhm.
if the kid is not interested, doesn't matter how much you grill. Like I've just seen too many cases, but it's like it's so hard you cannot get them to learn if they're not interested, right? So
Yes.
how do you get them at a young age to be exposed, but just to think it's fun instead of, feeling that like overload, right? Or not feeling that, parents are forcing you to do something, and not feeling like there's so much homework and all that.
So I do
But
want to ask you,
yeah.
because the fact that you've gone to Chinese school at age 4 all the way through senior in high school, that
Mhm.
is like really rare, like in a good way, obviously. So I want to ask you your personal experience, like going through Chinese school, and then obviously you were like 100% just like Chinese at home, right? And we go to preschool, I started having English in the mix, and the more, I guess, how did the transition go, right? And then like, how would you say like your language development wise, like your English and your Chinese? How do they coexist, right? Like developing wise, and then how do you keep up with Chinese really?
I think
um
that because I spoke more Chinese, that I feel like the English in school was definitely slower. So, for example, like if I was in school, like elementary school, like listening to a teacher like read a book, a storybook, I'm not gonna understand the whole thing. Like I think conversational English was like it's easy to understand, but then the more somebody drags something out, I don't understand it, right?
mhm.
Also, I remember these like history lessons um, with dates. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. But what I do remember is everything that was visual, right? So, like, oh, we had to make a life size um, cutout figure of a explorer, or like um, after we read each novel in school, this was during like middle school, we had to draw an illustration about like what we think the cover should look like. So I was just from a very young age a very visual person. So
Mhm.
I remember everything that has to connect with like a drawing or like artwork in some form. Um, I think that was always it helped me just remember things. But
Mhm.
anything like I think I think was it. I'm good at right brain. My left brain is not good like that maths and sciences. And I remember I struggled through high school actually because I was not very good at these right science maths. Um, I don't know. I remember like exam taking was really really tough for me
Mhm.
because I did my best. Like my mom was very patient. She would always say, "Do your best." It doesn't matter what happens, just do your best. But like saying that, I don't think my grades were not bad, right? I got like A's and B's. The only C that I got was in psychology, and I realized I liked the class, but just the terminology. There's too many terms to memorize. And I think that was challenging for me, like memorizing vocab words that are not in conversational speech. And the same thing in college as well. I got A's and B's, but my only C is in psychology.
Oh, no.
But it's because of all the terminologies.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so that I remember was tricky. Also, how was it? Talking about reading. I think reading I was slower in, because I remember like we had to read a certain amount of books per like grade or per semester or whatever. And I remember I would sit on the staircase and read my books, and I would read all the words, but it doesn't mean that I remember everything.
Or comprehending, right? I don't know.
Yeah, like I would read words, I can read it aloud, read the words, and it doesn't mean that I understand the whole book. So like when we go and do those like quizzes at the library, I don't think I got very good scores. Because I think I get like the idea of like the characters and everything, but I don't think that I could really understand like the whole like storybook. But my sister is different than me. She loves reading, right? I think that just stuck with her. And somewhere down the line, I think I just gave up on reading, because I like taking in information like visually and like hearing. Also, I think audiobooks are very good. Yeah, so I listen to
the same in that case too. Whenever I read things, just kind of in a blur. Like I get a gist of it, but I just don't. Like whenever there's reading comprehension, my experience definitely be different than yours, because I grew up in Taiwan, and I just remember all the English tests when there's like reading comprehension. I'll be like, I think both A and B make sense, but I just have to pick the one of the two, when clearly there should be only one, because reading comprehension. So I just remember reading has always been my weakest, like the most weak.
I think so. And I think I have a big imagination. So I'm always like daydreaming a lot. So if someone, like, for example, the teacher's like reading something, I can take in the information, maybe like a page of information or something. Then afterwards, I'm just like daydreaming and thinking about something else, right? But often people ask me, like, do you think in English? Do you think in Chinese? I do think in English. When I'm here, I think in English. But when I'm in Taiwan, I think in Chinese, right? So it just depends on like kind of what environment you're in.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, like the switching between the languages. There's always times where I feel like, oh, my Chinese is better, and okay, when your Chinese is better, your English is not as good, and it's a balancing act. It continues to switch, and I know this because I've seen my friends as well, because their parents took them back to Taiwan for like to study for like a year or two, or what, I think probably a year. And then after they came back, because we all went to the same Chinese school, so when they came back, their Chinese is like, oh, advanced, like it's just like so much better, right? And you know, because you can feel it. But then it depends on like who you're hanging out with, and then for all of us, it just, you know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, depending on like who you're hanging out with. There's a time period, I think I didn't start meeting more right, like Asian American friends until like the summer after college. And then I remember after I got into college, I think I was just more curious about my heritage. And you know, I thought at that time there was a lot of Chinese international students, so I was friends with a lot of Chinese international students, because I wanted to understand, you know, like, you know, what is it like being from China? What is it like growing up in Asia, you know, or growing up in Taiwan? And I wanted to kind of understand what it's like for them, and kind of, I thought it was very interesting to see similarities and differences between the way we grew up, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I think in the beginning, though, when I met these international students, I was speaking in English with them, and they would speak English. And I remember being like just in the library, and then people would come up to us, and they would think that my Chinese friend was like Asian American, because we were all speaking English. And so it just, but I think that that's a sign for like, even if you're learning a second language, as long, it doesn't matter if you have an accent or not, you just have to like speak it. You have to practice it. You have to use it. And then it'll be very, like, it'll
Natural.
just be very natural, you know? And people don't care. They just want to understand what you mean, you know?
Yeah.
And then later on, when I was in Baltimore, I don't know, maybe it's because it's Baltimore, but I had a group of like some Chinese friends and Taiwanese friends, and we all spoke Chinese together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that like when I lived in Baltimore, my Chinese was so good.
Wow. That
I
is
actually
so
felt
interesting.
like it's good. And then I came back home, and then like now because of work, so I work at an Asian culture center here, and but we communicate with people all day in English. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh, my English got better, but my Chinese is worse.
Would you say your home language still Chinese, or is more English now with your
um,
parents and sister?
I would say Chinglish. So
Yeah.
like I think majority Chinese, but still like we sprinkle in English words to communicate. And my mom does it as well. It's like not just me.
Right, right.
And I think, I don't know, you just, even if you're Taiwanese, right? Like your language adopts and evolves. And my mom's even told me this, like just certain things, it's just easier to say the English word. Like,
Sure, yeah.
for example, like a presentation or like,
Yeah.
you know, you say presentation or report, like how would you say that in Chinese? And you like can't even think of the
Yeah. Even
word.
in Taiwan, I'm pretty sure people say presentation as well.
And also the word like project.
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And there's like certain words that you just like, what is it in Chinese?
Like you said earlier, though, I mean, like communication, all languages like are tools for communications, right? Like, as long as you can get a meanings across. I mean, obviously, when you're trying to learn a language, it's like you want to be more confined and then be more focused in the one target language. But like now, like you're fluent in both, like you just kind of like freely navigate, like shifts between the tongue and the tail. Yeah.
It's a good thing. I think it's a superpower, and
Yes.
because you are able to camouflage in different types of environments,
Mm-hmm.
and like for example, sometimes like if I don't want to talk to people outside, like someone just like randomly on the street like wants to sell me something, and I'll just pretend I don't know English.
Love it.
Or like you just say some Chinese to them, like 我听不懂,我听不懂, right? And they're like,
That's a superpower, like you said. That's awesome. I have not pulled that card yet, but maybe I should.
I mean, it used to bother me when I was a kid. Don't like get me wrong. Like it bothered me as a kid because I was always seen as the foreigner, or
Mhm.
like it's just so obvious that like my parents are clearly not from town, so I'm not from, like we're all not from town. So like obviously the question of like where are you from, that comes up all the time. And then as well as just people just assuming that I'm an international student.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I think all of these assumptions, they, you know, just come from ignorance, right? Like people don't know and they are curious, so they want to learn more about you. And so when I was growing up, we had to do a lot of like work to like just educate people, you know, kind of like introduce our culture, introduce like what is Taiwan, you know, like what is our culture and everything, right? Like there's just so much to unpack, right? Or like how do you tell people like the difference between Taiwanese and Chinese and all that? Like
Yeah.
there's so much that's there. Um and but I think it's good at the same time because like my mom taught me that like, you know, if people don't know, it's fine. We just educate them. And at the same time, there's also a ton of different cultures, a ton of different people out there that we don't know. And, you know, like we should also spend the time to get to know all these different cultures as well, right? I think it's important to raise children to have a worldview. You know, like try different ethnic foods, right? Like just like appreciate all these different cultures, you know, and it more or less becomes a part of you as well. So I would feel like there's definitely a multicultural side of me that I would relate more to being American, like American side of me, because it, you know, you're a little bit more like open-minded. You're more, I think, interested in just learning about new people and new cultures. Um, versus I don't know, if someone grew up like in Taiwan or never left the island, they're less exposed, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think
Yeah.
that's the part of American culture that I like, I appreciate.
Yeah. Like being very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that in the society, American society is pretty diverse, but also depends on where you live too. I think like some communities are definitely more open than the other.
Mm.
I'm not sure
Oh
about your
yeah.
experience, but my experience when I was in IU, Indiana University, was it's very international school. Like
Mhm.
the makeup of the students, there's a large population of international school students, and then like there's so many languages, right? Like the language programs in IU is super strong. But based on my observation, but I was a grad student, so like not a college student, so like maybe different perspective, different experience. But my experience was more like people stay in their own bubbles,
Oh
like
yeah, oh, for sure.
right. So like for me, I
Complain.
feel
Both
like
sides. Yeah, on
yeah,
both sides people complain because I always hear like the international students, because I also taught
want to break into the American culture, right? But I don't know how to
American
get.
friends. How do I get white friends? How do I get, like
Yeah.
meet friends of different backgrounds and not just like in their own Asian bubble, but like on the other side, they're also like, I don't know how to talk to these Chinese people because they're all speaking Chinese with each
Chinese,
other
exactly. I know.
together. And both sides I think are curious about the other, but you know some people are not as open as others, but
Right.
there are people who are very like well traveled, and there are I know a lot of people who are like not Asian, but they know more about Asian culture than some Asian people.
No, yeah. I know, right?
There's just all types of people out
Yeah.
there. But I've met both, right? But I
Hmm.
think there are some people, I know that feeling as well, of like feeling like, okay, they see you as Asian, they only see you as Asian, or like they can't. Some people, uh, maybe if I don't know, if they come from a smaller community, maybe they just it's hard for them to see past your appearance,
Hmm.
and get to know your personality, right? But if someone is a little bit more, open minded, they'll see you for who you are because they're getting to know your personality,
Yeah.
um, and interests and whatever else. So yeah, I think what I definitely like internalized racism when I was younger. And I think the reason there's just so many different reasons why, people just, I think, talk in a way that is like talking down to you. That really offends me. Like
Hmm.
I just want you to talk like we're equal, right? So sometimes I feel like it's easier to make friends who are like Asian American, and we just understand each other's, or even
Maybe
immigrant.
unfortunately similar experience growing up,
Yeah,
not the most pleasant one, but somehow you
right.
have that to
So,
relate.
yeah, have like immigrant experience, or grew up in an immigrant family, and just everybody just we get it, so we don't have to talk about it, and
Yeah.
we can just like we just be friends, right?
Yeah.
But there's some people who I don't know, they just don't know, right? And then I don't know. Sometimes it's hard for me. Like, even if I'm American, I tell these international students, like, it's hard for me to make American friends too, because sometimes you really just don't know how to talk to them because they don't know how to talk to you. And it's just like a whole
Yes.
thing where you do need a little bit more education, communication, respect in order to make these types of friends. And I mean, it's still possible, but like, obviously nobody wants to be talked down to. I think that's the main
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, there's
Yes.
also thing of like, I think some Asian Americans or minorities may feel. I felt it, and it's this idea of like feeling kind of more inferior. Um, but I think it also has to do with like just the media that we're taking in, and because we're kind of a little brainwashed by the media of like the main character is always white, and obviously like Hollywood and the media, it's like getting more diverse nowadays. But when I was younger, the main character is always white, and occasionally she has like some minority best friends, but like you're just always the best, you're always the
Right.
sidekick, you're not the
Yeah.
main character. And so it I think in a little girl's mind, she's just always thinking,
You internalize that too. You're
blonde
just
hair
second
is
story.
beautiful, or like brown hair is beautiful, or like we would think obviously our dolls play a big role too, right? Like like I had all my dolls were white, and I had one Asian doll, and the Asian doll is always the villain in my story. When I'm like
Good for
playing
you.
dolls. I don't
That's
know.
kind of ironic. Yeah.
I don't know, but that's just very much, I think, at a young age, we internalize, we relate to the character on the screen, and that's what makes us feel like we know we're not white, but we feel more Americanized in that sense. Like we feel like we are the American girl, we're the American girl doll.
Right. Almost like if you want to fit in, you somehow have to forgo or erase your own identity in a sense, your
Yeah,
Asian
there's
identity.
a lot of that like internal conflict and battle, and it's very hard to explain. I don't even know how many times. I don't think I actually explained it that many times, but because it's just a lot of internal things, right? And not until very, very recently, like in the last, couple of years, have I come to terms with just being more confident in myself and not feeling like you're inferior and not feeling that you are a victim of anything. Like, I feel like when you internalize racism, you are a victim. You're constantly saying very negative things to yourself that you're, it's a victim mentality, or like a lower, I'm less than mentality. But I don't know, maybe also the education that I went through, has made me feel like, more empowered, and, like, like you can be a leader, and I think every child out there should learn these tools in order to make themselves feel like, you're powerful, because
Mhm.
you are, right? And there's many times in my childhood where I didn't have a voice because I didn't speak up, right? I was too shy and always in the shadow. So there's so much there. I think, we're dealing with a very contrasting culture between American culture and our parents' culture. It's like night and day. It's very contrasting, and we have to deal with this idea of, why is home culture and school culture so different, and you're constantly in between. It's this constant balancing act. Um, and it takes a lot in order to kind of like wrap things up and feel whole, right? For me, it's diving really deep into my identity, my heritage, learning about, different heritages, cultures. It's a deep dive, but it's also a deep dive inside, internally, reflecting on yourself, like, what are you not satisfied with in life, and why is it that way? Are some of these behaviors, um, is it that you don't have any friends because something within your behavior, like I was very introverted, I was not very open, I would always complain to my mom that I don't have any friends, but it's something within me that I need to change, in order to make these connections with other people. So, yeah, I think it's a lot, right? And a lot of that, whatever turmoil is going on inside of me, it often gets channeled into my artwork, into my paintings as well. So a lot of my artwork is about my identity, and kind of this this balancing act between East and West, right? It's a lot of what I do, but I think it's just, I don't know if it's just like me, that's just how my life is, and I think that's just where my concentration is as well,
Wow,
um,
that was so powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
I
No,
don't know, I'm just like spewing out
no,
words.
I love it. No, I love it. And then it's not just you, maybe not all Asians or like everybody, but I totally relate. Like I literally was like, yes, every single word that you said, I felt it. Like I can relate. I can resonate.
Yeah, but I also relate to a lot of Asian Americans. Like, you don't even have to be of like Taiwanese or Chinese background. Like, I think that there's so much that we can relate, even if, their parents speak a different language that's not Chinese, right?
Right.
There's so many shared experiences
Yes.
that I have found, even like just talking to so many students at the school about their experiences, because a lot of them grew up in predominantly white towns, and you struggle with the same thing. And I think a lot of struggles are also social as well. Like, how do I fit in? Like, which group of friends do I like hang out with? There's just, kids have a very
Your groups.
narrow, they think very narrow because they haven't really been, around, they haven't met enough people. They're very much in a bubble.
Yes.
So, I mean, but I would always say, like, try your best to have the kids around,
Mm-hmm.
good people, like, because just, I think the people at school, it's such a big influence on the kid, right? So, like, just whoever you're around, you gotta trust them,
Yeah. So this has also been my like question, and I'm trying to see what is the solution, or like how to. So kind of like, America being so diverse, but like people from different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds don't really talk to each other. Obviously, I know the byproduct is like racism and all of those things. But then I even like taking a school, for example, IU, right? We both went there. It's like literally the same thing, right? But just in a lot smaller version. And then me being an international student, right? And so like, for me to fit in, I don't know, or like trying to have American friends, is that I actually intentionally like stopped or limiting myself from speaking Chinese to people from Taiwan and China. So I feel like languages are beautiful, right? Like I'm all for like diversity, culture, and like learn different languages, but like it's such a natural barrier too. Kind of like what you said, right? Like when like if a bunch of people
Oh,
just speaking Chinese, then people are not gonna be like an American person. I'll be like, excuse me, what are you guys talking about? And then like, you know what I'm saying? So like I feel that was definitely not the best way of approaching. But like when I first came to America, I just like I desperately want to fit in. So I literally just like switch. Like I'm gonna stop speaking Chinese, even though my English was not fluent at the time. Like literally just like try to erase my identity and my culture and my language. And then so I am at the point like now so I'm like, there's not a lot of Taiwanese people here, but like I'm trying to like build a community now. They have children, so like I'm trying to connect with more Taiwanese moms. And then like nothing against the Taiwanese moms, but like they are like more like maybe your experience growing up, right? Like they are all like really close to each other, like holidays get together, they all speak Chinese at home, which is great. But then when I'm trying to like hang out with them, I feel like an outsider, just because for so long I've tried so hard to like intentionally to like, I guess, walk away or separate from them, which is, I don't know, my internal shame or whatever it is. Now I trying to like go back to it. Like I
I
feel
think you just have
awkward.
to take it like more natural. Think about it as more organic, right? Like there are times when like I don't want to talk to this. Like there could be a Chinese person. I don't know if I want to talk to this person, but I can't speak Chinese. I only speak English to you, and
Right.
it's. I mean, I think it's just you have to be very flexible. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because sometimes it could be a good thing, sometimes it can be a bad thing, who knows? But just you have to adapt to the situation, but kind of adapt quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
um I don't know, there's just friends, I don't, but I mean, it is code switching, right? I mean, you just know some friends you speak in Chinese with, some friends you speak in English with,
Yeah.
and I think it's okay to have both of them in your life, like
Yeah.
I definitely am very aware, like like, although yeah, I tend to hang out with more like Asians or Asian Americans, but at the same time, like I do have like non-Asian friends as well,
Mhm.
and it's also great. Like you just have such a great friendship with them as
Mhm.
well. So I don't think you have to say like, no to anything. Like just say yes, say yes, but like be flexible in
Yeah.
your language. But I have witnessed that language can be a huge barrier, and I think it's a lot of times like with like different races, whatever. It's not about race. it's about languages are different. And
Yes.
right? Like, can you imagine, like, I don't know. For example, like, for example, a lot of Asians maybe will be a little bit scared of, like, being friends with someone who is Black, right? This could be,
Yeah.
possibility.
Mhm.
But the thing is, like, one time I was taking an Uber in Baltimore, and my mom was with me, and we wanted to go see my dad's old school in Maryland University, where he went to grad school.
Hmm.
So we took, I wanted to see it, like we just like drove, like took the Uber, drove there. And then in the car, I got so car sick. And then I was telling my mom in Chinese, like, I feel so sick right now. Like, I don't even know if I can make it over there. And then the driver automatically rolled down the back window for me. And I was like,
So he understood
God,
Chinese?
he understood Chinese.
Oh my gosh.
And then not only did he understand Chinese, literally for the rest of the trip, we spoke Chinese to him, or he spoke Chinese to us.
Wow.
And, but he's Black, but he lived in China for quite a few years, and his wife is Chinese, so they have also a biracial daughter,
Yeah.
or 2 daughters, I think, 1 or 2, I can't remember. But it was like the whole ride we were speaking in Chinese.
Wow.
And I feel like my mom felt so comfortable. Like, just the idea of, like, you could be different race, but like language has the power to really bring people together.
Yes.
But it also does the opposite, right? It can
Yes.
make people feel like, oh, like if everyone in a room is speaking a language, but I don't speak that language, you feel like, okay, like they're not, like they're excluding me.
Mm-hmm.
That often happens. Like, for a long time, like, because we are Asian American, but then we speak English. So like if I'm in certain like Chinese groups, they often exclude me because they're like, oh, you're the English speaker, or like you're the American, right? Like that happens a lot. And I think for an Asian American, like to try to make friends with these international students, it also kind of
Another barrier.
give up because there's a barrier, right?
Yes.
It's still possible for you to meet someone that you really click with, but it might not be the person who is excluding you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think it just flip-flop is the same with like American people or people who are not Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I feel like culture, languages, like all of these are so like intricate, and just like, because I'm a mom, right? Obviously my kids are biracial, and then I'm trying to raise them bilingual and then appreciating Taiwanese culture, and like kind of like, like, try to raise them to be culture competent and then global citizens. But how do I give them a healthy outlook, right? Like to be confident and empower them versus this is what you need to learn, right? And then like make it unpleasant, or like they want to somehow feel ashamed and embarrassed of Taiwanese culture and the language.
It helps to learn not only Chinese or Taiwanese culture, but to learn about different types of cultures.
That's
right?
true.
Open that worldview. So I remember just from a very young age, like my parents would take us to go eat like Mexican food, or go eat we eat Japanese food a lot, but we also went to eat like a Greek restaurant a lot. So it's like, I think constantly in my life there has been like multiple cultures. So I didn't feel like Chinese culture was necessarily like
the only one.
The only thing, you have to learn this. I think it's very broad.
Right.
I mean, I know like but the one thing that helped me, I think, accept my Asian identity a little bit more is also like the Japanese animations. So like me and my sister watched a lot of anime when we were growing up, and then my sister was really into Japanese music as well. So I mean, I think she was more into Japanese things than I was, but I think we had equal amount of exposure to Japanese things. But also I think in Taiwan, for girls especially, like little Japanese stationery or like things are
Yes.
just popular as well. So I mean, it's a little bit part of Taiwanese culture as well.
Yes.
But I think I remember that being a big part of just like appreciation for Asian culture, because we really loved Japanese culture growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, what you say was like to the point though. Like it's yes, just like celebrate all the differences in different cultures, right? So when
Yeah.
you say that, it's you know how like about like cultures don't communicate or feel slightly intimidated, you know, for like people from a different cultural background. It's like there's like a little example. For example, I have a friend here. We were pretty close and we both like our kids are similar age. I would do play dates and stuff. And we should talk about like motherhood and all that. But sometimes when we do talk, she's from South Africa. She immigrated here because her husband. And then like I know nothing about South African culture. So
Mhm.
like sometimes like but then like I could educate myself or I could ask her. But then like a couple things that go through my head. One, I don't say intimidated, but I feel like embarrassed, like not knowing. And two, I don't want to ask her obvious things to one, embarrass myself and then like burden her because I should probably get asked the same question. So it's like these are all the things going through my head. So like now I can think like the other side, people who might actually be interested and curious about my own culture, my language, but also have the similar thoughts as well. And then unfortunately, this is natural, this is normal
Yeah,
human
I would
nature,
say
but
just
then it's
ask.
also the barrier.
But I think you should just ask, because that's where friendship begins, right? If you don't start that conversation, if you don't ask any questions, and I found that perhaps if you're asking like an Asian American, you know, you don't know if the second generation, third generation, fourth generation, yeah,
How
like
knowledgeable they are.
right, these questions might trouble them.
Right.
But I realize if you're asking someone from another country, like they could be from a different Asian country, a different European country, you know, different South American country. I think if you ask them about their culture, they will love telling you about it. You know, because I think that different countries, there's a type of cultural pride that each
Mm-hmm.
country takes. I think they would actually appreciate these questions, but right, yeah, sometimes, you know, individuals who are, you know, I guess, like I said, you know, like there's multiple generations Asian American, or they could be, you know, multiracial. There are definitely more sensitivities, because you don't know exactly what kind of environment they were brought up in, you know. um, they might there might be different things that are traumatic to them or sensitive to them.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah. But I guess you're right though. If you're just like being genuine and curious and want to learn, usually when you're in the conversation together, the other party can feel it, can know that you are not trying to, I don't
Yeah,
know,
I think they will feel
judge
your
people.
that you are genuine by like having a respectful tone,
Yeah.
right? So right, I could be talking to someone from a different race or a different culture, but it's all about, I think tone is very important. You know,
Yes.
how are you going about asking these questions? Like, be respectful always. That's the first thing. And but yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who they want to talk about their country. They want to share their culture with you. They want to share like the foods that they grew up with. You know, I think it's just a natural human instinct to like kind of want to share. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Tracy, that's a really good point. I feel like this turned into kind of like a therapy session, but in a good way. I love it.
Like going like a little bit off topic, because I'm always everywhere, like
No,
doing.
these are all on topic. These are all relevant, and I'm sure our audience would find it very like relatable as well. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, so I think we're gonna wrap up today's conversation. We'd love to have you back though, because I truly enjoy it. But anything that you would like to share that you feel like you didn't get to say?
Might share two things, just
Please, yes.
a little bit more about me, because
Yeah.
I'm an artist, so I'm also an entrepreneur. So I have my own fashion line and everything. So if people want to just see my artwork or see what I do, they can be free to look at my website. So I'm www.traceyjen.com, or traceyjen.art at Instagram. That's the Instagram. Yeah. So And I also have YouTube as well. So it's also Tracey Jen Art. So just be free to check me out. I also have I do some cultural work that has stemmed from my thesis project. So that one is called it's if you type in crossover Tracey Jen on YouTube, you can also find the cultural interviews that I have done before. Yeah, I could always go on and on with you. You know that.
So we definitely have to set up a different call.
Yeah.
But all of these, I would link them in the show notes so people can find you there. Because
Also-
I truly appreciate your artwork. They are beautiful.
And one more plug-in is that if, in case people are interested, I do help organize a Chinese family camp that is every summer in July, and it's like for 1 week. So if people are interested in that, they can also check it out. The whole camp is run in English, so it's a very interesting camp because it started in 1958. So it is started by Chinese immigrants that came here to study, but were stuck in the United States due to World War II. They couldn't go back to China, so they started, stayed here, started families here, and they also felt like they needed to find a way for Chinese families to get together. But this camp has kind of evolved into a more Americanized camp where it's all run in English, but we still want to preserve Chinese culture, arts and crafts. But it's also a camp for the whole family to go together. So if anyone is interested in that, they can also be free to check us out.
What's the name?
Chinese Family Camp. And it's for the whole family to go together, which means that in the early days, the parents did not feel comfortable sending their kids to summer camp alone by themselves. And who knows if the kid is safe, right? So the parents felt way more comfortable just, spending a week of vacation together with the whole family. So parents, grandparents, kids, everybody goes together. And it's just a 1 week of a nice, relaxing vacation. And you get to learn a little bit of Chinese heritage with some arts and crafts.
Nice. Sounds good. I would definitely share all of these in the show notes. But thanks for sharing.
Yes. And thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. But all right. Well, till next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you'll get notification when we have a new episode. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. You can go to our show note to find the link. And if you love this episode, make sure you share with a friend and bring them to our community. And if you enjoy our podcast, please make sure you leave a review. Your review will mean so much to us. It will really help me and Trista keep going. All right, see you guys next week. Bye-bye.